5 signs you are ready to or are already releasing trauma. Hey all, I am Victor E, and I'm here today to share with you some of the experiences that I've gone through in facing, in having set aside so much time and dedicating so much time and energy to releasing old patterns, healing old wounds, and all this stuff. And a lot of that has to do with facing, confronting, seeing, and hearing the stored emotion that came about from traumatic events. So the first one is probably the most, say, like incipient, or the one that happens most frequently in the moment or just after the moment of either a traumatic event or an event that mirrors the initial trauma, the first one that set in motion the pattern that we have been repeating. And that's trembling. So trembling is the body's natural way of releasing excess energy and those like fight or flight hormones. And the tricky thing is when society kind of or the world, our environment, the people in our lives are trying to protect us by setting the example or telling us not to do something that is very natural. In this case, it would be trembling. It's very in line with don't show any weakness, because if you show weakness or vulnerability, then the predators in the natural world, in the wild, will try to exploit that. Now that we're in a more fairly civilized, advanced society where we as humanity have cleared the way to become more or less apex predators, there's another step beyond that generally isn't covered, or that we just don't have a familiar awareness of and with. And that's, it's not about being a predator. It's not about mastering the world. Although it was and it has been one of the greatest things that is yielded, that is like the fruit of our labor, is that we now have this, this time to sit and feel what our ancestors could not, because they were still trying to survive. They were still in that, reptile brain. And we can move out of that, having evolved this prefrontal cortex that allows us to think, to envision a world for ourselves and then create that, really sets us apart from the wild, from other animals in the world. So trembling is one of those things that we can allow ourselves to do. We can communicate that either to ourselves or the people around us. Hey, like, there's this stuff coming up, trembling. I have to just take a minute to breathe and feel and process this. And that's something that was not afforded to even boomers. They're holding on to a lot of that stuff, and we either release what we're carrying or it weighs us down into the grave, unfortunately. So that's number one, trembling. Number two is compulsion to medicate. So because we have this time to process emotions, if we're not aware of it, when those emotions that want to be released come knocking, we may try to repress or suppress. The difference there being that repression happens instinctively. It happens without us knowing. Suppression is like, it happens with awareness. Suppression happens with awareness. Repression happens without awareness. So the compulsion to medicate, or to self-medicate especially, is one of those things that again, from that reptilian brain, is something that gets us to keep moving forward, because we're so afraid of being left behind, of being excluded, of being not seen, not heard. And this is kind of like another thing, another like more 3D materialistic way of looking at this, was that like the compulsion to medicate is that which keeps us included in society as productive members of society, right? There's, especially in the West, there's so much pressure and stress on, what are you doing? What are you creating? How are you keeping up? And that's just not something that we need to do. So a big part of compulsion to medicate is that there is emotion that wants to be seen and heard, and the compulsion to medicate is like saying, okay, that's too much. It's too much at once. So this medication, be it wine, be it cannabis, be it a drink, or prescription medication, is a way of kind of pacing out that emotion. But if we're just using the medication, even food or coffee, to stave off, to fight that emotion, to fight feeling that emotion, then it just builds up, and the walls that we build end up being the homework that accumulates. So if you've been to college, that you know that, like, so there are some classes or some professors where you don't need to hand in the homework right away, or like it's just a matter of like handing it in, and so it's a matter of like building good habits to do it more or less on time or paced out, rather than all at once at the end of the semester. So the compulsion to medicate is your prompt. It's your sign that your emotions are ready to be released, and it's just a matter of taking 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 10 minutes to sit in a quiet space, be it your room, your apartment, the bathroom, a shower is great for. I can go off on a tangent on that one, but just to stay on topic, find that quiet space to sit and feel what needs to be healed, right? And just really quick tangentially, the reason why we feel so inspired in the shower is because there is an implicit kind of agreement with life that, okay, I'm in the shower, so nothing's gonna hurt me, I'm safe, and my thoughts can just free flow. It's kind of like the water. The water is also like a visual, audible prompt to kind of inspire, kind of influence, kind of suggest how thoughts can also flow. And water is life. Many would show me, like 100%. The water is so important, and it represents so much in the metaphysical, spiritual, energetic sense. I'll do a whole video on what water means. But yeah, compulsion to medicate. That's your prompt to feel what needs to be healed. And be compassionate with yourself. So if it's not a matter of like do or die or do or don't, something that has worked for me is that if I've been drinking a lot of coffee or consuming cannabis in a way that I'm aware that this is kind of I'm leaning on my crutch a little bit too much, rather than standing on my own, what I'll do is set a timer for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and be present with my resistance, or with the desire to self-medicate, the desire to put off feeling what needs to be healed. And then after those 10 minutes, if I still really feel like doing it, then I'll exercise, practice that compassion, and maybe like drink half a cup, or smoke a little bit of a bowl. But I'm not like packing and crushing bowls. I used to every day, and then like, that just became too much. So yeah, that was number 2, compulsion to medicate. Number 3 is volatile emotions start to surface. And again, this is feeling what needs to be healed. When we talk about releasing traumas, it's not pretty. It's not super sexy. The product of it is, but like you think of a thunderstorm, it may be cool if you're, you know, if your house or car isn't being pelted and beaten by the storm. Uh, but we can think of that storm, this example, this analogy, as the world releasing energy, right? And for us, volatile emotions are our way. It's the body's way, the astral body's way, and the causal body's way of releasing all this energy. So for the physical body, that's stored emotion. That's like physical tension that wants to be released. The body wants to relax, and the tension is your physical body holding on to emotions that didn't get processed when that tension was created. For our astral body, that's another word for our emotional body, the part of us that processes or stores emotion. So if there are a lot of volatile emotions, the thing to communicate to the people around you and to yourself is that there's some stuff that was stored earlier on, and now it's gotten to the point that you forgot about it, and you know the awareness of it kind of dwindled or diminished, and now it's like you make time for me, or like you make time to like release me and feel what needs to be healed, or I'm gonna force my way out. Like that's the kind of damn, I just had something, but that's the kind of rationale or mentality that your emotional body is in. Like this stuff needs, this poison that we've been holding on to and that's been stored in our body needs to get out. So volatile emotions aren't necessarily or only because someone triggered you or something triggered you. In a causal way, something triggered you because you could be triggered, and so that trigger is like life or spirit or, you know, God's way of getting you to release this stuff, getting you to let go of this anger or the frustration, or, you know, whatever volatile emotions you're holding on to. It's life's way of getting you to let go. So in those moments, what's worked for me is to breathe. Again, communicate to yourself and to the people around you, hey, what needs to happen right now, what takes priority, what takes precedence, is that I need space to process what's going on. Nothing to do with you, maybe a little bit to do with you, but if I'm being mature and holding myself accountable, then I need to focus, direct attention on managing my emotions. Nothing to do with the other person. Even if they were the ones who triggered you, what got triggered in you is your responsibility. So again, what helps is to breathe rather than act on it. So breathe and don't do anything. But I can't tell you by experience how much better that is than taking your anger out on the people around you, right? Hurt people. Or in this case, hurt people breathe and process their shit rather than taking it out on the people around them. Another thing that helps with volatile emotions is elaborating, right? There's this dense energy that's trying to come in and express itself. So in that moment, in the moments where you're breathing and distancing yourself, kind of like how we're doing today, elaborate within yourself. What is the emotion? How many different ways can you describe the emotion? What is the texture? or experience of the emotion. And you may see, it's been the case for me, that when I elaborate, it's almost like, excuse me, it's almost like the part of me that wasn't seen or heard when those emotions and energy started to get stored and trapped within me, now they're being seen, now they're being heard, right? My sister today, she's going through, she's thankfully recovering from COVID, but her body's aching. She's feeling very stressed. And so I asked, like, what does it feel like? What does your body feel like? What does the volatile emotion feel like in your body? Somatically is the word there. And what emotions come to mind when you think of the pain that you're feeling? And you'll see this as soon as you start to describe and elaborate on the pain, it's almost like you stop feeling it, right? Because you're in a way, we've been resisting the pain. We don't want to feel the pain because it's undesirable, it's uncomfortable. But if we can learn to sit in and with the fire of that discomfort, man, that is the way to clear it, to feel it, to heal it, to free and liberate ourselves from it. See and hear what it is that wants to be seen and heard within you. So that's number 3, volatile emotions. Breathe, elaborate, see and hear yourself. This part of you, it's part of you. Number 4, old triggers don't trigger, and there's a little bit more of a general sense of being okay. So again, with life working with you to create your version of heaven on earth, if there's any hell within you, that's when life comes in and triggers you, because it's saying, hey, there's still a trigger here. You can still be triggered. So in those moments, when we do get triggered, that's when those volatile emotions get triggered. And so we just do those exercises that I just mentioned, but you're releasing trauma, you're vibrating higher, your consciousness is expanding when old triggers just don't have that power over you anymore. And so when life can no longer control us in that very specific way, well, then there's no one having power over us. And so in a way, we've reclaimed our power, and in another way, we've gotten better at life. Now, part of my story is one of growing up in a chaotic environment, and then how that chaotic environment became a very natural transition into military service in the infantry. And so it was like perpetuating that general sense of chaos. So a lot of triggers were accumulated then, and as I released them, there became unfurled this general sense of being okay. I went from waiting to die, having suicidal ideations, anxiety, frustration, depression, clinically depressed, having bipolar, just the mood swings. The more I allowed myself to feel it, the more I confronted my traumas and felt them and processed them using various healing modalities, even psychedelics, those old triggers were dismantled. And so in moving away from being in fight or flight all the time, like as if I was still in the firefight, as if I was still in the traumas of my early development, I moved away from that. I was moved out of that, you could say. And in dismantling these triggers and bringing presence and awareness, presence especially, into my physical body, into my physical environment, that's when awareness was brought to those points of tension in my body, those old injuries, those, and like those emotions of like, you know, I'm not being seen, I'm not being heard, I'm not being supported, were brought up. And man, that is some that is some heavy emotion, that's some heavy shit. But in me being the one to see myself, to hear myself, it's almost like that's when I found out I was worth being seen, being heard, being given time and space, which is not something that I grew up with. But when you give that to yourself, it may not feel like enough. It wasn't enough for me, and it still isn't, because we're social creatures, humans. But when you give yourself that time, that sends the subconscious energetic signal to your environment that, hey, this person is worth giving time to. And if nothing else, I hope you take that away from this video today, that you are worth, and especially you become worth, time, energy, when you give yourself that time and energy. You know? That was the thing that had slipped my mind. If you don't make time for wellness, your body will make time for illness. That kind of thing. I'm paraphrasing. But that was number 4. Old triggers just don't trigger you anymore. Number 5, sudden anxiety. This is a more advanced one. Sudden anxiety, or with without explanation, just kind of comes on. There's you become very suddenly highly resistant to the present moment. And what I've discovered is that, I mean, for me, it's kind of like a good thing that's trying to come in, and it's kind of traversing that negative, stagnant, stored emotion. So the good is trying to come in, the love is trying to come in. Excuse me. But there's stuff that I'm holding onto that gets in the way. Nirvana, Something in the Way, great song. And I think that's very apropos of that. Sudden anxiety isn't that there's something wrong with you, or that there's something wrong at all. It may just be that on a higher level, something good is coming your way, and it's kind of triggering your awareness and an automatic negative interpretation of what's to come. Maybe what's to come is really, really good. Maybe it's what you've been waiting for. And it's just, triggering what's already there, what needs to be released. Again, life is going to help you release what has been stored, or what needs to be released. Right? Just quick recap: 5 signs of trauma release, or that trauma is being released. Trembling, compulsion to medicate, volatile emotions are surfacing. Breathe, elaborate. Old triggers just don't trigger you anymore. Awesome, great sign. And 5, there's a sudden anxiety that comes on. If nothing else, you got this. And it's not about having a perfect life. What I've learned from, the entity, or the concept of suicidal ideation, is that I forget. I completely forgot what I was going to say. But yeah, what did suicidal ideation teach me? I'll say that for another video. Subscribe, like, hope this added value. Love you guys and gals and non-binary pals. Peace.